Good evening. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and thank you for joining me on another edition of Technology Access Television. Well, TATV is going global, and we are continuing our global dialogue with some friends from Mexico. There is a great and historic activity that is going on in Chicago as we speak. A delegation of young, budding entrepreneurs have come from Mexico City to connect with the city of Chicago and the entrepreneurs and resources that are here. And a big part of their connection is to look at inspiring models of innovation in education, some unique programs that can inspire students that may not otherwise think of themselves as entrepreneurs or venture capitalists or even be in business at all because they think they don't have the skills or the opportunities. And so that is true in the United States, and it is true in Mexico as well. So our delegation that is here visiting are getting some insights and ideas from some of our thought leaders here in Chicago around what works and what's produced a very estimable track record of taking people with talent and skills and molding them into some opportunities. And today we're going to discuss with two of the leaders of making this global connection around human capital and the potential of talent and the unlimited opportunity that is within each and every one of us to aspire to great opportunities in the whatever you're doing in life, whether it is entrepreneurship, technology, or even just life itself. And my guests today are part of this ambassadors between the two countries and coming to Chicago. I want to thank them for being here. Guillermo, thank you so much for being here today with me, a guest, and also my good friend, Jose Ignacio. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Well, this is your second time here, but I'm delighted that both of you guys could come. And please, Jose, tell me a little bit about this vision you have and how it came together to create this connection between the opportunities of Chicago and Mexico.
Sure. Well, here's the story. I've been in Chicago 5 years. And probably 4 years ago, I got associated with IC Stars, which is a phenomenal university who help kids take a decent job opportunities. And every time, I like the program, I've been associated with Sandy Castrula and her crew. And then every time I travel to Mexico for business purposes, I keep talking about the greatest program from Chicago. And in one of my discussions, I met Guillermo. I said, Guillermo, you better see whatever Chicago is doing. So I keep talking to him about this program. He fell in love with the idea, and then since then, we continue to exchange ideas and dialogue. And probably 4 months ago, he said, Jose Ignacio, we are ready. We are ready to go to Chicago, learn the skill sets, and then have a formal discussion with Sandy and her team to explore the possibility to expand this idea back into Mexico. And you know, truth of the matter, the problems we are fixing here in Chicago are probably 90–80% similar to the problems we may be able to fix in Mexico if we just cut and paste the model. So that's it.
Well, that's very exciting. Chicago, for all of its prosperity, has some striking disparities among participants in the resources that are here. And yet, what IC Stars has proved is that there is talent, unbelievable talent, that just needs to be cultivated, needs to be pointed in a direction, needs to be challenged. Because one of the things that, as you know, IC Stars does such a good job of is they don't play any games. People have to come from within to want it, and they have to understand some of the basic ground rules for putting themselves in a position to be successful. And, you know, when I first approached Sandy and IC Stars about being on this show, she had no interest in being on the show. She said, well, if you want to do something, put the students on the show. And I think the first time I did a show with them, the students actually were sitting in those chairs.
Sure.
And after doing interviews with several of the students, that finally Sandy came up and was involved in the interview. But I've had so many wonderful experiences, as have you, with interacting with IC Stars over the years. And it is a unique program. So, Guillermo, now you just trying to figure all this out. What is your thought about a fit for a program like this back in Mexico City?
Thank you, Bruce. Well, for instance, I love the idea of bringing a program that has been so achievable, so improvement to all the kids in Chicago. For me, it's very inspiring to realize that there are ways to do things and to help others besides only throwing money to public programs. That it's what's going on right now in Mexico. Our angle is pretty simple. We have a lot of young people with a lot of talent that don't have the opportunities that they may need so they can pass from a low-income life to a better income life. So when I talked to Jose Ignacio and I realized that in this benchmark of looking of ways to do things different, Chicago had already proven to find an answer to this problem, to how to give chances to people that deserve them, to people that want to find them. So we try to establish a way of making an interchange program or to start talking with Sandy and find out what's their hunger for opening a new IC Stars, a Mexican way of doing things with all this knowledge and all this background, so we can help kids in very similar situations than the kids are living here in Chicago.
I think there's going to be an immediate win-win in this situation, because as Sandy and all of us here in Chicago recognize, is that our public education system, which historically the graduation rate from our high schools, 1 out of 2 kids that would start as a freshman would more than likely not be around 4 years later to graduate. Yeah. And so that's a very troubling number, is what happens to all those kids. And the city of Chicago is the 3rd largest public school system in the United States. So that's a very large number, and the bulk of those kids in public schools, and not the fancy public schools or the charter schools or the selective enrollment schools, but the regular high schools that have educated so many in Chicago. Well, those schools are largely African American and Hispanic, and so that graduation rate of 50% means that a lot of students are just being cast back into the communities. And we know today in 2014, without a high school diploma, what are you going to do? And so a program, now, Jose, you've been involved directly with
Yes.
IC Stars, and as a former CIO, what do your other CIOs think of the experience that you've witnessed in IC Stars?
Well, I think I can tell you that every single student who went through the program has the best credentials in IT. I mean, they're excellent guys, and they are not only technologists, they are human beings with a very interest in terms of improving the life of everybody else. So they are really rounded. It's not only about training the technology, but also training how to become an efficient leader or an excellent leader in life.
And before, you know, it's probably not fair to our audience, because we're sitting here talking that everybody knows IC Stars and knows what it is, but for the sake of our audience who may not have heard of IC Stars, give us a little background on exactly what this organization does and how they do it.
Well, I don't know if I will provide an accurate background, but basically IC Stars does 3 things. One is we train kids on the basic layer of technology.
And when you say kids, what's the age range of people who participate?
Well, it could be anybody. It could be you, or it could be me.
Well,
most of them are probably 20, 22 years.
That's what I wanted to point out, is that these are young people, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 25, some with children,
yes,
some with maybe a GED, maybe a little college or no college, but some people may have a college degree but are underemployed and not having opportunity because of whatever reason.
Yeah, basically, kind of the credentials to enter ICSI is that you have the passion. You have to have the passion to improve your life. You have the proper IQ, and you are willing to commit yourself for 1 year. So you need to put your time, your passion, and your soul to make it happen. Now, as a result, these guys learn the basics technologies, and then we put them to work. And then at 4 o'clock every single day, they're exposed to executives. So every single executive, any executive in Chicago will sign on and go and have a talking to them. So if you look at the full agenda, so you get to know the theory, the practice, and the exposure to the executive. So after 1 year, you are totally rounded. So you are capable of getting a decent job out there in the marketplace.
Now you would think, because and you know the statistics, that within IC Stars, many of the students are lucky if their earnings annually are $3,000 or $4,000 prior to participating in the program.
Yeah.
So like a lot of underskilled and underemployed young adults, they're not having a lot of success in the job marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
But after the program, after 6 to 9 months of this kind of mentoring and working and creating these new skill sets and becoming very much more full of pride and can interact with people on a variety of levels, they're getting into their first jobs into companies. And what kind of salaries are they making?
Well, I'm not quite sure that the number is actually right, but I think it's between $30,000 and $40,000.
That's correct.
But besides the money, which is a very important
Yes.
element, everybody who went through the program become advocate about social work. So once they graduate from the program, they go back to their neighborhoods, the communities, and they start doing some entrepreneurship. Why? Because they know that what they have given is because there is a bunch of people who really want to put money and time down to help these kids. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that really helps the community as well.
So, Guillermo, you're very modest because you have a stellar academic background, but you also are very much enthused about the role that young entrepreneurs are going to play in this, the revolution of innovation within Mexico. And so what role do you see reaching out and reaching back to these young kids in Mexico that may not have had a chance to go to university and maybe are limited in what they think their options are? How important of that, because you're spending a good portion of your time bringing these first round of entrepreneurs through your incubation and accelerator process. Why is it important to connect that with this idea of reaching back to these young people who otherwise would not have bright opportunities?
I think it has to do with numbers, because when you put the country in slices, you can see that almost a third of the country has no opportunities available. They said that the worst mix ever in terms of how do you describe yourselves in Mexico is to be female, to be with a background of indigenous background,
Native,
like Caucasic background, and no education at all. When you have that formula, and I'm talking about 1/3 of the population, the only jobs available for them are either going to the streets and ask for money, or trying to start in a job where they demand themselves to do the hard work, to go and loan, even any kind of jobs that has to do with carrying things, or driving around all day, or walking around all day, or maybe sales, but not a particular job offer that can get them sustain a family, for example. So it's a matter of opportunities. How do we get them to understand that innovation is not only a guy thinking of great ideas on how to transform the world, but is how to change your own ecosystem, how to change your life, how to define yourself as someone that is happy. And happy means not being in the fun places every day, but being mindful. So for us in Startup Mexico, and for us in Mexico as part of the ecosystem, we're really looking forward to find those kids that want answers, but they have no mentors, they have no resources, they have no opportunities. So we need to take this time for us to create these bridges between people that don't have the skill, but they have the talent, and with a system, an education system that has failed them because they don't have the amount of time to put all the effort required for 1/3 of the population that is not even in the academic system. So we're looking for answers because we're already there. We have 100 million Mexicans that will come into the next generation, into a digital era, and they don't even have access to high internet speed. So that's awesome. If you see the world, India has transformed itself by having a simple plan.
Yes.
How to have a brand of a country that looks forward into technology.
Yes.
Historically, Mexico chose a brand that it's a very low value brand. We saw ourselves as a cheap country for manufacture. Our brand value has been for all this year, if you want to build something cheap, for instance, a car, for example, you go to Mexico. And we can build anything, and we can really do it fast, and we can do it with high quality. But there's no added value in just building things. So we are entering to a creative class economy with a lot of people that want to give chances to everyone. But we need them to be skilled. It's not only a matter of being smart, it's a matter of having the right tools, having access to technology. So for us, that's our small effort that wants to trigger a lot of other results in Mexico. We have to look forward to that.
Now, your academic background and your early work background was in an area that most of us think are science fiction, and that's robotics. But robotics is very much part of the reality of advanced manufacturing and of different disciplines. So I would imagine that in some cases, manufacturing in Mexico is as sophisticated and skilled as exists on the planet, in terms of if you were to go into Volkswagen or some of these huge auto manufacturers, probably some of their newest and most high-tech plants are in Mexico.
Yes, we're state of the art in terms of technology-wise plants and how do we ensemble almost everything. If you see right now, for example, Bombardier is building airplanes in Mexico. We have a very nice boom in terms of space industry. But the thing is that even though we have those skills, and robotics historically has been an enemy of jobs.
That's
because
right.
you always relate that every robot means 3 people are going to get fired. The truth is that only and only if those jobs have not added value. Because robots will never substitute the creativity, the willing of changing things. You cannot program something to be smart only because you program it.
That's right.
You can only depend on technology if the people that are creating it understand what's the purpose, what do they achieve with that technology, how do they create a better world on it. So it's a matter not of only having the technology available, but having the values. In Mexico, we have a huge crisis in terms of values. We're a country historically with a lot of corruption, with a lot of, not good values, let's just say, but it's not all the country.
That's right.
It's like violence. We are the worst country in PR worldwide.
And this is what's so exciting about the potential with IC Stars, because as you mentioned, the goal of IC Stars isn't just for a person to get skills and get a job and leave their community. If anything, I've seen some IC Stars alums that have worked and proven that they could be successful and immediately have gone back and set up nonprofits and community-based organizations and want to do more to go back to the very communities that they grew up and lived in and say, I want to be changed at the local level. And they've encouraged community-based organizations and nonprofits and social service firms to embrace technology. One of the reasons I started this television show wasn't to give a platform to big fancy entrepreneurs. It was to inform nonprofits and community-based organizations that they too could embrace technology to fulfill their aspirational missions in the community. So there was a big move afoot for many years to establish community technology centers where the public and after-school youth and intergenerational families could come in, and the young people could teach the grandparents how to get online and set up an email account and go in the cloud and use Gmail and all of this kind of stuff. And this is still very much needed, because when you go in schools, many times you see that the use of technology is not very creative. And not very inspirational, and not applied to how it solves problems outside of the school walls. So what's so exciting about what IC Stars have been able to do now, and I sit here, and it's when I'm sure we'll have Sandy here, and she'll say, well, Bruce, this is a 18-year 15-year overnight success story. Because how many years has it been now? It's been
but this is the problem. Since this is a working model, in the spirit of share and reapply, we want to take it and move it into Mexico. And probably we believe that even if we just touch one life in Mexico, that
Yes.
will be worth the effort. Because one person who has the skills, the passion, and the attitude can really start changing this community.
So now, have you been to Chicago before? Is this?
No, first time.
This is your first time
Yes,
to
first
Chicago.
time.
And just give me quickly your impression. I know you haven't seen a lot. You've been in meetings and you've been on Michigan Avenue, but do you have a sense that there is either at some other level that there is a connection here that will work for your vision of change and innovation back in Mexico?
Well, I think we're very similar. I'm amazed on how close we really are. For instance, every service I had or every place I've been, I heard Spanish. Somehow, there's a lot of Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, well, all Latin America
Yes.
here in Chicago, so that makes me feel like home. Obviously, the weather is different. We're used to a more hot weather, tropical weather.
We are too. Just hadn't got here yet.
But we can breathe something very similar, like what's going on right now in Mexico. We can breathe this stage where things want to happen, but they haven't happened yet. So everything is like close to being attached, but you cannot ensemble this puzzle right now. I'm seeing a lot of efforts. I'm seeing a lot of, in my meetings, people that is willing to do things. Mexico is pretty much the same speech.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. There was a gentleman, I think he won a Nobel Prize, Mohammed Yunus.
Of course.
And
Economy, yeah.
he is so inspirational for getting people to think, having impact and social impact. And I think when we look at microfinance and bootstrapping and crowdfunding and all of these new models, that many people want to invest in change. And yet we were laughing before we had the show today. We were talking about the roulette table of stock markets and commodities and how that's all. But when people can put $100 or $500 in somebody's idea or vision, they might say, well, I'd much rather do that. Because I know what they're doing with it, and they can see the payback and see the investment. So there is a tipping point that is coming of people wanting to say, just like you could have stayed in consulting and been a hero and traveled the world as a consultant, but you made a decision to get off of that train and say, I want to make a difference on the ground in my community with my people in my country at this very important time, to turn it in this direction of innovation and solving problems and making a difference in people's lives. And those are the types of things that connect with a lot of people. And so I think that, but it's borderless. Doesn't have anything to do with, this area or that area. It's like minds, just like, how did I meet this guy? With a group of international people, just as a inner motivation to want to be out of the, again, the confines of just the politics and all of the stuff that goes on in Chicago incessantly. And then here you come and immediately connect to IC Stars, which is one of the most innovative programs. And I'm sure you talk to corporate execs and CIOs all the time because that's your job. You advise CIOs, and there are probably some CIOs that never heard of IC Stars.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the whole idea is that to have kind of dual communication, so we can really transplant the success from Chicago and bring it back into Mexico. But in Mexico, there are very good things that we can even bring them back into Chicago. So it's going to be kind of building the bridges between these two great cities.
Well, that's very, very, very.
And obviously, education is kind of the cornerstone.
So for if you could, as we wrap up this segment today, and people watching this are entrepreneurs, are investors, are educators, how can they connect to be a part of this process and support what you're doing to build a groundswell of local support, both here and, as you mentioned, that we do have a lot of people of Latin American, Hispanic,
yes, a lot.
descent. What would you say to them today? How can they connect with what you're doing? Is there a website or some way that they could connect to keep up with this process and maybe learn more and pay attention to this effort as you go? What are you going to call it in Mexico?
That's a good question. Right now, we're using StartUp Mexico as our main platform. we will evolve as a brand. I'm hoping IC Stars Mexico.
Okay.
That's something we're starting to chat about, and we're very excited to see that project go through. But right now, if you have the time and if you have the will and you have the talent and the skill, pretty much is keep sending us emails, asking us how to connect with us. If you have the time, we have a lot of mentoree programs.
Okay.
We also have entrepreneurs that are willing to spend their efforts in social efforts, like Mohamed Yunus model. We have a bank in Mexico, Cubo Financiero is called, that it's trying to implement the same model that Mohamed Yunus has
really?
in the idea. Yeah, we have a lot of things going on. So right now it's the best time ever for both countries to really start jump-starting the entrepreneurial and social ecosystem, because we have the will, we have the talent, a lot of young people are looking forward to it. So pretty much that's it.
That's
And you know, I will give a very quick advice. If someone here in Chicago really wants to know what it's all about IC Stars, there is a phenomenal website. It's www.icstars.org.
Okay.
So you can visit the website, and there is opportunities for you to really engage actively into IC Stars. So it's one example. Now, if someone really wants to connect and build bridges between Chicago and Mexico, they can send me an email. I think on the portal there is more information about me, and I will be delighted to talk to those individuals as well. But you know, at the end of the day, it's important that everybody needs to move by themselves. So there are opportunities all around the place. So we have just chosen a couple of ideas.
Well, I think this is so exciting, and I'm so fortunate to be able to get wind of this activity early on, and to have this first ever visit from your Startup Mexico team to Chicago. And I'm happy because this is what news is all about, breaking information. You heard it first right here on Technology Access Television. We are going to jumpstart this effort here in Chicago of connecting these two dynamic cultures, these two innovative cultures. Most of us in Chicago have known entrepreneurs of Latin American and African American descent all our lives, and know that people just breathe entrepreneurialism with starting companies and coming here and becoming very successful. So this makes all the sense in the world to be a part of this process. And so I want to thank my guest today, Jose Ignacio.
Thank you very much.
You want to have a comment, a closing comment?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And Guillermo, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
and
Bruce.
thank you for being a part of this history-making conversation today, connecting these two great cities, Chicago and Mexico City, in technology, entrepreneurship, education, and social change. If you want to know any more about this program, you can contact me directly. I will more than happily put you in touch with these gentlemen and also with our friends at IC Stars. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this has been another edition of Technology Access Television.
Thank you very much.